My name is Amanda Brown, I'm 28, and for almost my entire adult life, I've lived as if I had to shrink to the size of furniture, just to squeeze into the tiny spaces my family deemed large enough. I was an assistant in the marketing department. The pay was peanuts. The workload felt like I was running the department single-handedly. My mother thought it wasn't a profession since I wasn't wearing a white coat or a smart court suit, but I was the one paying for everything: the food, the internet, the electricity, the plumber who spent a week apologizing for the exploding sink, and not once, was I ever given a simple, human thank you. My mother, Susan, could leaf through gossip magazines for hours without even blinking while I tried to somehow get her attention. My father, Mark, was always looming in doorways, hands in his pockets, close enough to hear the screams, but far enough away that he'd never intervene. And Tom, my 26-year-old brother, was convinced his 15,000 Instagram followers gave him the status of an adult. The house always smelled of wet dog and hopelessness, but the smell had become so familiar that I stopped noticing it. Habit is dull. Yes, I lived with my parents, not because I didn't want to grow up. I was simply the one paying the bills while Tom took pictures in the mirror for the third time that day. I fixed floods while my mother complained about me causing stress, and somewhere deep in my chest, a stupid, stubborn hope still glimmered that my 28th birthday would be different, that at least this year I'd be noticed. A few days before the date, I carefully sat them down in the kitchen. Maybe we should celebrate somehow? A little evening cake at least? Mom didn't look up. We'll see, Amanda, we might have plans. Plans, for my birthday. It was already a wake-up call, but hope dies hard. The day itself started normally. I got a birthday greeting at work, a colleague slipped me a cupcake, they even made an e-card. I bought myself a new outfit. It was stupid, but I drove home feeling like everything might work out, as if I'd see a card on the table, or a crooked balloon taped to it, at least something. But when I pulled into the driveway, the blood in my veins turned ice. My things were lying on the lawn, just scattered: boxes, clothes, books, pillows, as if someone had decided I was trash. I froze, the air became thick, my brain refused to comprehend that this was real. I rushed to the porch. Mom, Dad, and Tom were standing there, as if they were holding a family meeting. I hoped there wouldn't be any betrayal. Mom stepped forward and said, "Amanda, it's time for you to leave, you're no longer welcome here." What? Today? Now? I could barely hear my own voice. Dad stared at the boards beneath his feet, as if they were more important than me. "It's my birthday today," I whispered, as if those words could change anything. Tom pursed his lips. "Maybe you should have thought about this before being such a burden." A burden? Me, who was dragging everyone down. The world rocked. Mom folded her arms across her chest. "We need space, and anyway, it's time to grow up." That grow up hit harder than any slap. "Can I at least take my things?" "They're already packed," she said condescendingly, as if doing me a favor. That's it, on my birthday, instead of a celebration, eviction. I didn't let myself cry in front of them. I didn't let Tom take my pain away on TikTok. I didn't let Mom grimace again. I simply carried the boxes into the car with trembling hands, feeling my heart crack. When I closed the trunk, I asked, "Why today?" Mom blinked lazily. "Consider it a gift of independence." I drove away from the home I once considered my own. The birthday cake I'd bought myself lay in the back seat, the most evil symbol of my own idiocy. That night, I found myself in a cheap motel, smelling of bleach and oppressive regret. I sat on the bed, surrounded by my things, staring at the melting cake, and for the first time in my life, I told myself the truth. They never wanted me. They wanted my hands, my money, my services, but not me. But if they thought they'd destroyed me, they had no idea who they'd kicked out. In the morning, I woke up with a pounding headache and an emptiness like the fresh bottom of a well. I didn't have the luxury of lying around and suffering. Work was waiting, real work. Unlike Tamina's, I pulled on yesterday's jeans, combed my hair back in an attempt to pass off the damp mess as a hairstyle, and walked into the office feeling like wet cardboard. Karen looked up from her computer. Her name was Karen, but there was nothing internet typical about her, only kindness, so quiet, calm, and warm. "Amanda, what's wrong?" Sometimes a soft voice is enough to break down all the walls that kept you upright. Her question was the touch that broke the thread. I nodded, I shook my head, and I burst into tears, quietly, almost soundlessly, just tears finally allowed to come out. Karen came over and put her hand on my shoulder. "Hey, tell me," I whispered. "I got kicked out yesterday, on my birthday. I'm staying in a motel." She blinked slowly, as if absorbing every word, then she took a deep breath and said something that will forever remain with me. "Take my keys." "What?" "No, I can't." She pressed the keys into my palm. "Spend the night at my place, eat some proper food, take a shower, just stay in a place where you're treated normally. A motel isn't an option." I tried to object, but she shook her head. "It's just a couch, Amanda, and you'd do the same for anyone else." And the strangest thing is, she was right. That evening, I sat on Karen's couch, immersed in a soft blanket that smelled of vanilla and an impossible comfort. Her apartment was the complete opposite of everything I knew, clean, warm, as if put together bit by someone who cared. I sipped tea from a funny mug that said Manager of the Year, sort of, and, for the first time in years, felt the tension gradually lift from me. No more clenched jaw. No more controlling my every breath, just silence, a safe silence I didn't even know I desperately needed. Karen didn't squeeze anything out of me, she didn't expect thanks, didn't ask awkward questions, she simply gave me space, a shower, a kitchen, a sofa, a space where no one bothered me and no one wanted anything from me. And there, under that blanket, a truth hit me, so quiet and so absolute that I almost burst into tears again. Family isn't blood, family is a choice. I stayed with her for a week, just long enough to stop shaking inside. Every evening, Karen asked how I was, in a light, unobtrusive tone, as if simply confirming her presence, but my phone was silent, no calls, no messages, no attempt to say a belated happy birthday. Their home seemed to breathe a sigh of relief without me, and the most unexpected thing was, I didn't miss her, I only missed what a family could have been, but which I never had. By the end of the second week, I had a small studio apartment, tiny, cramped, but with such an incomparable treasure that my fingers trembled the first time I turned the key, a front door I controlled myself. Karen helped me move in, we carried boxes, she cracked jokes, and then handed me a small potted plant. "For your fresh start," I laughed. "A fresh start and an empty wallet." She smiled softly. "You can handle it, you've already passed the hardest part." And she was damn right. What seemed like a disaster turned out to be prologue. 9 months had passed, 9 months since the day my things lay scattered on the lawn like unwanted waste, 9 months of silence, 9 months during which I reassembled myself, but as a different person, more mature, calmer, and more independent. My studio became a fortress. Every mug, every pillow, every funny lamp I found at a flea market was chosen for me. I stopped living in a state of perpetual tension. I got a promotion at work, not sky high, but enough to feel, for the first time in years, like I was breathing. I have savings, I have stability, I have a future. My mornings became quiet, no slammed doors, no accusations, no sighs hinting at my ingratitude, just me, my used coffee machine, and the sun rising over the neighboring rooftops. So when my phone vibrated one day and Mom appeared, I felt nothing, no trembling, no anger, no melancholy. I even snorted quietly, "Of course, now that I'm getting it right." I replied, "Curiosity is a powerful emotion. Sometimes you need to hear a familiar voice to reassure yourself it's no longer possessing you." "Amanda," Mom said in a strained, cheerful voice, "how nice to hear from you." "Hi, Mom, I didn't expect a call." She ignored my tone. "My cousin told me you got a promotion, that's wonderful." "Aha, the icing, the approach, the groundwork. You've really accomplished a lot," she added softly, "and we were thinking maybe we should reconnect." Reconnect? I repeated evenly. Yes. We could have Sunday dinners again, in your apartment, of course. It would be neutral territory, a clean slate. A clean slate, for them, not for me. I let the silence linger so long that she felt uneasy. Why now? Her voice changed, a slight hiccup, a slight falseness. Well, Tom's girlfriend moved out, and it became a bit crowded. We thought your apartment would be perfect for our family gatherings. There it is, the real deal. They didn't want a relationship, they wanted the space I created myself. Let's get this straight, I said quietly. You kicked me out on my birthday, you haven't called for 9 months, and now you want to use my apartment. Don't be dramatic, she snorted, we're trying to build bridges. No, I corrected calmly, you're trying to cross the bridge I built. I brought the conversation to a polite end, but the ache beneath my skin barely stirred, old, familiar, but no longer all-consuming. 2 days later, there was a knock on the door, 3 light knocks, too casual to be accidental. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop. Mom, Dad, Tom, standing at my door, as if they were a delivery service. For a second, I considered pretending I wasn't there, but I was no longer the woman they'd thrown out. I opened the door. Amanda. Mom sang, and stumbled inside as if invited. Of course, you were just passing through, I muttered as Tom laid his butt on my couch. Dad trailed quietly behind, like a ghost in a khaki jacket. Mom looked around my studio, small, neat, cozy, and nodded with veiled approval. It's nice, cozy, clean. Yes, I nodded. It's funny what happens when one person is responsible for a space. She didn't react, she never heard anything she didn't want to hear. We were thinking we could have Sunday dinners here, family should stick together, after all, she said solemnly. I smiled, coldly, evenly. You mean how you stuck together with me on my birthday, when you unloaded my things on the lawn? Mom tensed, as if I'd stepped on her favorite illusion. It's not fair, you forced us to do this. I simply let the silence flow between us. It responded more sharply than any words. Tom cleared his throat sheepishly. We didn't come here to dredge up old things, we just thought it would be nice to spend time together again, maybe make your place the new family gathering place. I turned slowly to him, as if turning a spotlight. Cool, let's recap. You didn't lift a finger on the house, you mocked me for living there, you silently watched as Mom kicked me out, and now you suddenly want my apartment. Tom stared at the floor. Dad pretended to study the plant on my shelf. Apparently he'd found a secret of the universe in it. We're trying to move forward, he murmured softly. You're doing well, let's not dredge up the past. The word dredge up struck me like an iron shovel on ice. Dredge up, I'd been dredge up that for years, when I was closing their accounts, when I listened to Mom complain about my character, when Tom occupied the largest room and gobbled up all the hot water, when they decided I was an object that could easily be gotten rid of. Yes, I dwelt on every second of it. I walked to the door and opened it just enough to clear the air. You can't throw me out when I'm inconvenient, I said evenly, and then show up uninvited just when my life is getting back on track. Mom's face froze, hardening, as if a lever had flipped inside her. You're being dramatic again. No, I said, I'm finally getting better. They froze. Waiting for me to flinch, apologize, beg. I didn't flinch. They left with their backs straight and their lips pressed into a thin line, as if holding back words that could burn bridges, and for the first time, I closed the door in their faces, without the usual lump of guilt in my throat. And I couldn't even imagine that their next move was already brewing in their heads. 2 weeks passed, 2 sweet, sleepy weeks, where the biggest drama was my coffee machine alternately screaming its heart out and then suddenly coming to life as if nothing had happened. I almost believed their visit was a final, desperate spurt of control. I underestimated them. On Tuesday afternoon, my phone vibrated. Group chat, Mom, Dad, Tom. The subject line, yes, they even wrote the subject, was discussion of family property and long-term stability. Who even writes a subject line in a text message? I opened it, and instantly regretted it. Amanda, We have spoken as a family and have come to the conclusion that it is time to discuss the role of your current residence in our shared future as a family unit. I read it once, then twice, then out loud, to make sure I wasn't having a stroke. My one-room apartment, it seemed, was now to be considered a family asset. My heart sank, and then flared with a wild, pure rage. Mom finished the thought. As the eldest child with stable housing, it's only fair that your space be considered part of the overall family support system. Fair, fair. Was it fair that I had to pay the mortgage while Tom posed in front of the mirror? Was it fair that they dumped my things on the lawn on my own birthday? The message continued, we're not asking for ownership, only access for Sunday dinners, holidays, or if Tom needs a place to stay, of course, a Trojan horse named Tom. I didn't respond right away, not out of emotion, but to craft the text like a scalpel, precise, cold, without any loopholes for manipulation. And when I finally wrote, it came out like this. Hi Mom, Dad, Tom, thank you for your message. I am genuinely perplexed by the suggestion that my rented apartment could be considered a shared family asset. To be clear, the lease is in my name only. Rent, utilities, furniture, and upkeep are paid solely by me. Family funds were not used. Since my eviction, I have not been offered any support or housing. Therefore, the apartment is legally and ethically mine. Access will not be granted. Any further attempts to discuss it as family property will be perceived as a violation of my boundaries. I was about to send it, but added the last line. And please avoid the term family unit in reference to a dynamic where I was treated as disposable and expendable for years. I sent it. And off it went. Tom responded first. Wow, you've changed. Yes, dramatically. Mom sent a long stream of accusations about how real families don't need legal documents and that I'd become cold and ungrateful. Ungrateful. The woman who evicted me on my birthday. I didn't answer. Something clicked quietly inside, as if a door had opened into a room I'd never allowed myself to live in before. And speaking of doors, 3 days later, there was another knock, quick, sharp, as if urgency was masquerading as decorum. I peered through the peephole, goosebumps ran across my skin. Tom, one backpack, and a you owe me expression. I opened the door just a crack. What do you want? He exhaled heavily, theatrically. Listen, it's hell at home. Mom and Dad are arguing. I just need a place to stay for a while, maybe a week or two. You took the backpack, I noted coldly. Well, yeah, obviously. So you already decided I'd agree. He frowned, as if I'd denied him not a place to sleep, but the right to oxygen. You have a place, why not help for the first time? For the first time? For the first time? I looked at him as if he'd just declared gravity a fiction. You stood there and watched me get kicked out, on my birthday, and you didn't say anything. It was Mom's idea, he snapped, don't blame it on me. You stood next to her, I said, and smirked when she called me a burden. Tom's face twitched, as if I'd poked at something he'd been carefully burying. I thought you were better than that. I am better, I said, that's why I have boundaries now. He quietly but firmly pushed the door, testing it. So you're simply turning away from your own brother? You turned away first, I said. And I closed the door, no harshness, no drama, just a crisp, confident click, the sound of a cycle closing. Through the peephole, I saw him remain standing, as if he'd been knocked out of reality. Then he reached for the phone, no doubt to spin his mother a heroic tale about how cruel Amanda had abandoned him in the cold rain of fate. But the door remained closed, and in that silence, something appeared inside me for the first time that had never been there for my family: strength. But, as it turned out, the story was only just getting started. This wasn't the end, this was the beginning of Amanda Brown's freedom. 6 months had passed, 6 long-awaited, inspiring months since Tom stood at my door with a backpack and an inflated ego. 6 months of silence, no pressure. No passive-aggressive monologues from my mother, not a single attempt by the Browns to again worm their way into my life under the guise of family values. And with each passing day, I felt like, for the first time in my life, I was breathing not like someone sitting on a powder keg, but like someone who had finally emerged from a windowless room. My small apartment, still so cozy and chaotic, had become almost sacred. Every inch of it was about me, not who I was forced to be, but who I became when I stopped being their endless source of sustenance. Work, oh yeah, I got a promotion, a real promotion, the kind I wouldn't have had the strength, confidence, or even the air to get before, because it all went into maintaining the family home, like a funnel that could never be filled. Karen, the same Karen who gave me her sofa that night, has become someone I can rely on, a friend for whom helping isn't an investment, but a gesture, a person who asks, "How are you?" and listens to the answer, rather than waiting for the next opportune moment. And yet, the most profound change didn't happen within walls or a salary, it happened within me. I used to believe that love was sacrifice, that if I was quiet enough, comfortable enough, reserved enough, I would one day earn a place at the table in the family of my birth, that they would finally see my worth. But boundaries taught me another truth: people who love you don't demand proof, people who value you don't use your kindness as fuel, people who care about you don't remember your existence until after you've finally gotten better. Sometimes, at night, old guilt still whispered in the blind spots of my confidence, maybe I should have tried harder? Forgiven faster? Looked back? But then I remembered that morning, when my things lay in boxes on the lawn, and I stood among them, like a mistake my family had decided to undo. I remembered Tom's smirk, the coldness of my mother's words, my father's silence, who didn't even try to intervene. Their decision wasn't about place, it was about power, about convenience, about the fact that I was too inconvenient to be part of their construct. And when I ceased to be an available resource, they lost access, not a daughter. This truth was revealed one day, and it could never be pushed back. I started traveling, nothing luxurious, just small escapes, a house where you could feel the wind, a beach where the sunrise seemed to fold its wings right into my palms. I went on dates with myself, I bought myself flowers, I filled journals with words I'd once been afraid to even think. And on one page, I wrote what I wished I'd heard as a child. You have the right to leave. You have the right to protect the peace. Blood kinship is not a contract. You don't have to burn to warm others. Maybe someday I'll share these words with a friend, or with someone I'll be close to, perhaps with my future child, because cycles don't end on their own, someone has to put an end to them. And I became that end. I don't know what Tom's doing now. I don't know if Mom complains to her friends that I've lost my connection with the family. I don't know if Dad says anything at all in that house. And for the first time in my life, I don't care. Their silence isn't a threat anymore, it's a wall I built. I have peace. I have stability. I have a home that's not a battlefield. I have a life that, finally, belongs to me. And if there's a real twist to this story, it's that they thought kicking me out was their victory. And that turned out to be my beginning. If you're wondering right now, wherever you are, if you become a monster simply because you chose yourself, listen carefully. No. You chose the path forward. Because freedom doesn't always begin with running, sometimes freedom is just a closed door, and you, standing behind it, finally stopping shaking. I am Amanda Brown. And closing that door was the best decision of my life.